Hi, I'm Brad Hauck. Welcome to Lesson 2. Lesson 2 is about building a keyword list. Now, in Lesson 1, we looked at focusing on your niche. So now that we have spent a bit of time thinking about what our niche is, we need to do some keyword research. It's really, really important that we understand what people are searching for online. So why are keywords important? It's a really good question. Everybody talks about keywords all the time. Keywords this, keywords that, niches this, niches that. We understand why niches are important, but why are keywords important? Well, it's pretty simple. When the search engines first started out, they had to start somewhere trying to define and classify the information that they found. In other words, the websites and all the pages in them. And originally, probably the biggest search engine was Yahoo and Alta Vista, and they were both different. Alta Vista was a true search engine. It used an algorithm to find pages, whereas Yahoo really was a directory. In other words, people went and looked at the sites and then said, oh, that's a certain sort of site, it goes in this category. Over time, Yahoo became more search engine than directory because they realized that the world was going that way. Now, eventually, a little company called Google arrived on the scene and basically dug a hole, put those two in it, and covered it over and took over the whole world. It was really simple. What they did with their search algorithm destroyed pretty well every other search engine or directory on the net. So, how did they build such a successful search engine? Well, the fact is that the algorithm that runs it is designed to take your question and bring back the best answer. But with so many resources, with so many pages on the web, how do they do that? Well, they had to start somewhere. And personally, I like to think of it as they took the best model and made it into a mathematical model that then they could apply to computers. And the best model that we have for classifying documents is the Dewey Decimal System, which is the big fat library system. So I'd like you to think of it that way. When you go to a library, you go and look at books. And if you want to find a particular type of book, you need to go to the catalogue and you search for the name or the topic of the book, and they will tell you where that book is in the library, and you can walk up to that shelf and you can find that book. But how does it actually work? So just say you're looking for a business book. You might find that that's in the 600s range. So somewhere in the library, there's a set of books in the range called 600 in the non-fiction area. And then you say, well, actually, I'm looking for a book on leadership. Well, that might be in the 670s area. So now we've narrowed it down from 600 down to 670. So it's cut out a lot of books. When you compare the whole library, you've gone from millions of books to tens of thousands of books. Now you're like, okay, well, leadership, we want leadership for women. Well, that narrows it down to say 674, which is a much smaller area in the library. And then if you're after a specific book, often you'll see it 674.12 or something like that. It narrows it right down. So we can walk to 600s. We don't even have to start looking. We just walk and go, oh, there's 600s. We scan the shelves and we go 670s there. 674, we move along, there's 674. Okay, now we can look 674.01, 02, 03, 674.12, and there might be 2 or 3 books there maybe, and you just go those 3 or that one. Okay, so the system works really, really well, and it stood the test of time. Now, the search engines basically do the same thing internally. They take your website and they want to classify it so that they can easily come back to it when they get a specific question about that. So if your website is a business site about leadership for women, well, then the search engines kind of put you in that area. So if someone says, oh, I'm looking for some information on leadership for women, then they might show you your website. Now, they might show your website because it's a bit generalistic, coming back to our niche, isn't it? It's very generalistic. But what if you talk about leadership for women who work in corporate jobs or who run their own businesses, who are entrepreneurs? That narrows it down when you come into those areas. And it also allows Google to actually bring back an even better result. So if someone's looking up information on leadership for women entrepreneurs, then if your site is all about leadership for women entrepreneurs and you've written a book about that and you've got a course about it and all that sort of stuff, to Google that may be the best answer to that question. So by choosing our keywords carefully, we tell Google that our site is about that topic. So if our keywords is leadership for women entrepreneurs, we're telling Google that's what our site is about. And because of that, they can then classify us more easily. So keywords allow us to do that. Now, I use the word keywords loosely. It is also used in the term keyword phrases. So you'll hear me banter these back and forth. But what I'm talking about is the couple of words that describe what it is that your site is all about. So if we were to say leadership, too generalistic, not niche enough. Okay, so a keyword to me is too small. Okay, it's keywords or a phrase. Excuse me. So think about this as we move forward. So do you use words or phrases? Well, I think I just covered that one. So words and phrases are the same thing. Keyword, too generalistic. Your chances of ranking are so very, very tiny that unless you've got a really powerful brand, which you could have and you can build over time online, it's essential actually that you build a brand more than anything else, because brands get shared, okay? Brands get revisited, people trust brands. But when you're doing this, at this point, you're looking at the phrases. So when you do searches online, the majority of traffic seems to come from one big keyword phrase. So it might be dog training Denver, okay? That's where the most traffic is. And it's often based on the service or product that you have and some geography if you're a local business, okay? It's obviously different if you're selling just online, but geography is important for real world local based businesses. But also it's really important to understand that, that one keyword phrase is worth a certain amount of traffic, but attached to that one keyword phrase is a whole range of longer phrases. So there might be 5 or 6 words in those phrases. There might be related terms, similar but different. And each time someone comes to your site, you get one visitor from that search and one visitor from that question, one visitor. They all contain your keywords. They're all searches that are built around your big phrase in a way, but they're not that exact phrase. So people get really knotted up about, being number one for that phrase. And then when you go and look at their statistics, you actually found out they got, say, 20 or 100 for that week from that phrase, and they picked up 500 to 1,000 from the related phrases. So don't get too caught up in trying to get all the traffic from being number one in the big keyword area. For example, plumber Gold Coast might be the number one phrase for a plumber on the Gold Coast, but the competition is like up here. It's massive. The one for plumber Rabina on the Gold Coast might be down here as far as traffic goes, but it's more targeted traffic and it's less competition for you to compete against. So yes, you can work up to this one, but if you try and target this one from the start, Gold Coast Plumbing, okay, rather than Rabina Plumbing, you are going to have a very, very hard fight on your hands. Over time, you can build up to that. Sometimes you can jump straight up, but the majority of the time in high traffic areas, especially like trades and that, it can be really difficult to get those phrases. And often I will say to people, if you want to get in there really quick, then put some money into pay-per-click advertising. Okay, so let's understand that there's lots of traffic from SEO for related phrases. In fact, it's often more traffic than for the main keyword phrase. So how do we find keywords? Well, you often have conversations with customers and you know the general language that they use on a day-to-day basis to talk about your services. Now, you use specific jargon sometimes, but the customers use an entirely different type of language. You need to rank for the language the customers use and for the jargon, but concentrate on what the customers are talking about. It'll give you hints to how you're seen in the community. So, for example, my favorite one is a landscape architect. Now, that is a specific area of landscaping, okay? But in the end, the people who are looking for what you do are probably looking for a professional gardener or someone to come and tidy their yard and trim everything each week. So they are more likely to look at the searches relating to gardeners than they are landscape architects. You might see yourself as that, not necessarily the sort of person who actually does design gardens like a proper landscape architect, but as this sounds like I really know what I'm doing. I just make your garden look spectacular through my gardening. So remember, often it is, how do you put it? It's difficult for people to accept this because it feels like they've created this persona around their business, but it's not what people look for. So you can be a landscape architect and get no calls, or you can be a gardener and be busy. It's your choice. You can test both. You can still say you're a landscape architect within your descriptions, but you really want to target gardener if that's what you're really doing. Now, we also need to look at trends. What are the most common searches? So you say dog training and puppy training. Which one's more popular? Are people looking more for puppy training, or are they looking for dog training? And that changes over time as services become more well known, or the language on TV changes. So we hear people using certain language on TV and then we start applying it in real life. All sorts of factors affect trends. So you need to go and look at tools like Google Trends, which will actually show you what the rising searches are, what the trends are over time. Now, there's a range of keyword tools that you can use also to help you find these, and we'll look at a couple of those in a minute. The keyword tools, there's some you can buy. My suggestion is just start with a couple of the free ones, because in the end, you often know what the big phrase is. Remember we talked about the big keyword phrase, like, plumber Gold Coast. You know that one. And you can use these other keyword tools to find out what some of the related ones are. Now, even Google gives you hints on this. And the other thing is too, go and have a look at what your competitors are doing. You can glean a lot from the top 5 people, top 10 businesses, and see what they're actually ranking for, because that will also give you information regarding what keywords you should be thinking about including in your website. You need to build a big list of keywords and keyword phrases. This is where I get that crossover going on. There's a couple of reasons for this. Number one, yes, you use certain major phrases on your website when you're SEOing, but then if you want to reach those extra visitors, you need to keep creating content. Google wants to see it, but also more pages is like a bigger net. You have 5 pages in a website, then it's like having a net with 5 squares in it. You throw it out, chance of catching a fish are really small. If you have 1,000 pages in your website and you have comparatively 1,000 squares on your net, your chances of catching fish are much higher. So think of it that way, okay? You need more pages and we need to reproduce more content. So we make a big list, and we can take those lists of keywords and we can write articles about them. We can add pages to our website that talk about each of our services and things like that. So we can expand that out. So making a big list gives you something you can go to all the time when you need to produce content. If you need to do a video, if you need to do an article, whatever it is, you can go to this list, and it saves you sitting down going, so what am I going to do today? What am I going to write about? You just pull out your list and you go, that one. Now, when you're doing this search, you can use words like how, where, when, and why. Now, why would I use that? Because people ask Google questions, okay? They're asking questions and looking for answers, for example, near me, I need a plumber on the Gold Coast near me, okay, or I need a plumber near me. They're starting to think about what they need, but that's only a small percentage of the traffic. You've got lots of other people who are looking for, where do I find the nearest whatever? Who is the number one in my area? And then also from an ongoing content point of view, people ask questions that you can answer. When is the best time to get my smoke alarm batteries changed? Why should I, replace the washers in my taps every month? All these are searches. They all bring more traffic. So build a list, copy and paste it into a spreadsheet or a text file, depending on how you want to do it. I just use a text file often, but if you put it in a spreadsheet, you can reorder them in alphabetical order, which is often handy. But you need to build this. It's really, really important. The other thing is you can group them on the phrases, and this is what we see often in pay-per-click, where we group an ad to match with a phrase that someone's searching for, then land them on a page about that. And SEO, you can apply the same principle. So what are some tools you can use? The first one's free, is keywordtool.io. So it costs you nothing. You can use it for free. You go there, you can even choose which country you're in. You can type a keyword phrase and press enter, and it'll bring back a big list. Now, there is a pro version which gives you more information, but you can start off with a free version. It's nice and easy. So put your keyword in there, type it in, it'll bring back a big pile of phrases from Google Autocomplete. So this is an interesting thing in itself, Google Autocomplete. When you start typing a search into Google, you'll notice that as you type, it will bring up a range of searches. So it'll go sideways and then go down that match what you're starting to type. And that's the autocomplete function. Those searches that it's bringing up, it's not just picking them out of thin air, okay? It's working on an algorithm. It knows that the majority of people, when they start typing that phrase, are looking for those things. So that's a big fat hint about what people are searching for, about your niche. So I'll often just go to Google and type in and see what starts to come up. And as you keep typing, they change. So I keep adding words in and seeing my phrases. And then you can write those down. Okay? So think about that. Autocomplete gives you lots of hints, and it's coming directly from the horse's mouth. The horse being Google, because they're the ones seeing what people are typing. This is one I love. It's a bit of fun. It's called Answer the Public. Okay, so answerthepublic.com. You can go there. It's free to use, in its basic form. And you've got this guy who's looking at you and looking all grumpy, and you type your phrase in, and then it brings back all the different questions that people are asking about your phrase. So in this case, you can see I've typed in SEO course, nice simple one, and they have all these questions. Now I've just cut off 2 columns there for you to look at. So we've got R. So are SEO and SEM the same thing? So that's a great article to put on your site to build your expertise and to teach people a little bit more about the topic that you're an expert in. Are SEO tools worth it? What are SEO best practices? All this makes great content for a website. Now, as I said, it's not necessarily the keywords you need for your homepage, for the main theme of your site, but it's definitely what you can use ongoing to produce content that shores up, that builds a lot of content around your main focused keywords. And if we look in the can area, how can SEO be done in the easiest way? Well, you're getting that now. How can it be done in the easiest way? How can SEO improve sales? It's a great question. So if I was producing an SEO course or something like that, I could answer those questions, and that would bring people to my site, and then they may see my ad or sign up for my information package or my free giveaway, and I can convert them into a sale. Okay, so these are really great tools. Now there's lots more, but these 2 are a good place to start. In my experience, most people know what their big phrase is because they've done their niche, they understand their niche, they then understand what the competition's being found for. So finding that main phrase for your website is pretty simple. It's finding all the additional content that you're going to add over time that becomes difficult because people don't know what they've got to do next. When you've got these questions, it's really easy because you can just write an article, do a video and get it transcribed, whatever it is, about your topic. Okay, very straightforward. So let's review. When it comes to choosing keywords, you need to narrow down just like you did with your niche. You need to realize that not all the traffic is in the big keyword phrases, and although you want to rank for those, it can be extremely competitive. So some people might have had a website for 10 or 15 or 20 years, and you're coming in with a brand new website, no history, no content much, just a few pages. It's very hard for you to compete directly against them. Now, that doesn't mean you can't. It just means that it's going to take you time. It's going to take producing information, all those sorts of things. So you need to target in more closely for a local business, for a geographic area. for a much more international business, a particular vertical or target area. We talked about cafes, business consulting, previously, and look at how you can bring it down into the main phrase and then build out a list of keywords and questions around those keywords that you can answer to produce more content that is related to your topic that will draw people in. And also, it gives Google the idea that because you're continually adding new content, that you are an authority in that area, and it prefers to actually show authority sites because they're going to give the best answer to a question because they're focused. Okay, again, Google's looking for the brand that really does help the most in that area, and they will promote that brand even more than another site that's related to it. So your job this week is to go through and use those tools, make a list of the big keyword phrases that are related to your industry. Think back to when you were niching. What are some of those big ones like dripping taps and all those? But make a list of those, pick out what your big phrase is going to be because that's going to be the one we're going to focus on in the next section, and then build a big list either in a text file or a spreadsheet of all different searches that people are typing around your topic you think specifically fit what you're doing. Some will be kind of good, some you can rewrite a little bit so you can why is SEO and SEM important to Gold Coast businesses? Okay, so that's SEO, Gold Coast is right there together. I can make that article work for advertising my business on the Gold Coast or something like that. How can I make it work? Just by putting in an extra geographic keyword, I can actually make that work really well, because then when Google sees that and they have a search from the Gold Coast, they may show my page because it's actually talking about the Gold Coast over someone who's written an article about the same thing but doesn't have it set on the Gold Coast, and my site's on the Gold Coast, for example. So that's it. Get stuck in. The bigger the list, the more questions you can answer, the easier it's going to be for you going forward producing additional content, which you will need to do. I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson.